St. Thomas and St. John and St. Cry. Nothing can come between us but the waters that divide, yeah. Even though we're just a few square miles, I travel around the world with Virgin Island pride, yeah. A lot of people still going through strife, and still we live a joyful life. That's why the place nice, so nice, so nice. Sweet, sweet St. Thomas nice, so nice, so nice. St. Cry full of pure vibes, so nice, so nice. St. John a real paradise, so nice, so nice. Hey, we got so much to lose, yet so much to prove. Hey, Virgin Island teachers never raise no fool. Mama sent me school. Hey, when it's difficult, we still a push through. No matter what the blessings of we continue. We are a people of great value. That's why we stick together like tamarind stew. Hey, remember Queen Mary, we make the fire burn, and Edward Blyden with the Africa vision. Remember St. John with the slave rebellion. General Butler say emancipation. That's why the place nice, so nice. Sweet, sweet St. Thomas nice, so nice, so nice. St. Cry full of pure vibes, so nice, so nice. St. John a real paradise, so nice, so nice. Hey, we got so much to prove, yet so much to lose. Hey, Virgin Island teachers never raise no fool. Mama sent me school. Yeah. St. Cry produce the band Midnight, and them the kind of roots make the fire ignite, yo. Julian Jackson was a champion in the ring, and now him three son them a do the same thing, yeah. Tim Duncan come from the VI, one of the greatest, and the world can see why, yeah. If you ever ask me where I'm from, born in the Virgin Island, and the whole place nice, so nice, so nice. Sweet, sweet St. Thomas nice, so nice, so nice. St. Cry full of pure vibes, so nice, so nice. St. John a real paradise, so nice, so nice. The Virgin Islands nice, so nice, so nice. Rock City sweet and nice, so nice, so nice. Twin City full of pure vibes, so nice, so nice. Love City a real paradise, so nice, so nice. Hey, I'm so proud to be from the VI, a place of history like the African side.
Please log in to your mobile phone, television, computer for live streaming or your nearest radio. It's now time to listen to Connecting the Dots.
People come, let we go. Turn up the radio. Turn it up. This is the people show. No matter where we go. Come Connect the dots.
Good morning. I just want to say good morning to everyone, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and that consists of St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, and of course the Little Water Island, and we call it Little Water Island. It's part of the district here of St. Thomas, St. John, but we are never to leave them out. I just want to say good morning to each and every one of you, and of course we had a very eventful weekend that consisted of so many different things. But before I get in to some of the activities and some of the things that transpired over the weekend, I just wanted to offer condolences to many of the families here in the Virgin Islands. You know, it seems like the older we get, the more people we know are passing. And I don't want to say dying because that sounds so severe, you know, but passing. And I wanted to extend my condolences to those families, and for some of you out there that probably don't know that the individual or persons that you know have passed, that's what I try to offer condolences, but also to share with you the passing of individuals here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I want to start with Clement O'Stapleton. You know, my condolences to his family and friends. Jenna A. Faulkner Sr., Stacy Ann Bryan, Ethelyn Arthurton, Alfred Corbett Sr., Aubrey E. Brooks Sr., Edston Patrick Corbett Sr., Alisa Angela Fellner, who I've known all my life, one of the best beauticians you had in the Virgin Islands, and actually took care of a lot of, especially the female colleagues I had in the Senate. Charlotte S. Lacey, Beryl Y. Peters Wade, Nathaniel Williams, Martin Tuohi. My condolences to them and my condolences to the family and friends at this time. And folks, you know, I just wanted to go back to some things that transpired last week. Of course, you had, unfortunately, another killing, and of course some violent acts where it left, I understand, 2 individuals injured that had to walk into the Royal Leicester Snyder Regional Hospital to seek medical care. And you know, it's just, when you hear those things, you just have to wonder when we're going to get crime under control and be able to address it with strategic plans. And I'm looking forward to the commissioner, and I've extended the invitation to the I don't want to say acting commissioner, but he's been nominated to the position, Mr. Ray Martinez, who's going to serve as commissioner, and let's be optimistic in that he's going to be confirmed for the position, because you need stability in that department right now to be able to move forward with some sound and solid leadership to address some of the problems, or the particular problem that is transpiring in the Virgin Islands. So I'm just saying out to Mr. Ray Martinez, once you confirm, you know, the invitation remains open, that you feel comfortable that you can come on the radio to share with the public and respond to questions from the public. And by the way, talking about public this morning, I just wanted to let my listeners know, traditional radio, that something is wrong with the telephone system this morning, and we may not be able to receive calls here at the station. We haven't on Addie's time, and certainly it won't change on my time because we operate on the same system. So I just wanted to say that. And skipping over to a past topic that we discussed, the vaccination lottery and the preferential treatments and the rules and regulations, and I'm still hoping to get some answers from that, and I'm going to try to bring on an individual that can share with us his experience with winning the lottery, where his monies went from one amount to another amount to another amount, and that leaves things in suspect. And I'm hoping that maybe at the appropriate time, one of the government officials can in fact respond to that person's allegations about his experience, and at least be able to answer these questions that people have been asking, because people are approaching me on the road as they see me and ask me these questions about this vaccination lottery. Anyway, it seems as though it has passed, and that program is over and done with. I'm not sure. And also I wanted to get a list of the official hurricane shelters, because we're still in hurricane season, and I think that is valuable information. That is information that should be circulated to the public at an optimum, that it cover a lot of quarters and people are knowledgeable or know that these hurricane shelters, because you never know who can end up in a shelter. I don't care where you live. If your house is blown away or damaged by a hurricane, obviously you're going to have to seek refuge or shelter somewhere. And definitely the hurricane shelters are for that purpose. And we just want to know where they are. What is designated officially hurricane shelters? Now, there's something that also came up in an article that I saw on, I think I saw that article on VI Consortium, where it spoke about our Virgin Islanders, full American citizens, an article that came out. And we want to believe that President Joe Biden is a friend to the Virgin Islands. But what I read in that article, and I still like Joe. Who doesn't like Joe? Some people don't like Joe. But still, I supported him, and I'm hoping that maybe something changed. And I want to read a caption for you guys, because we need to pay close attention. If we are going to fight to be treated as full American citizens and not second-class citizens, because if we don't have certain rights, but those born and live in the 50 United States have full rights, then you're telling me that I'm really a second-class citizen. And I wanted to read a caption here. It says, 1 week after members of Congress called on the Biden-Harris Department of Justice to condemn the racist insular cases, the department has instead doubled down to argue, based on the insular cases, that people born in the U.S. territories have no constitutional right to U.S. citizenship, equally American, which advocates for equality and civil rights in U.S. territories. And this was purported in a press release. Now, I think leaders have to be leaders, and we have to stand up and fight, because when you look at the whole or the entire landscape, when we're talking about the Constitution, and our young men and women, if there's ever a draft, could potentially be drafted to the army, because we know what has happened in the past, where folks were drafted, and they were drafted just like every other American in the United States. But those Americans in the United States have certain rights that we don't enjoy. And in this case, they're saying our constitutional right to U.S. citizenship. That is something that in the near future, I'm hoping that perhaps I can get the delegate to Congress, the governor, to put their perspective on record, because it shouldn't be about it's a Democrat, so I ain't going to say nothing. You got to stand up and fight for the majority of the people of the Virgin Islands. And if we're talking about even those that relocate to the Virgin Islands, talk about those born in the Virgin Islands and others who don't have that constitutional right. That is something worth seeking clarification. And I don't want to hear a deafening silence because of party affiliation. I don't think that is right, because then you would not be representing the people, and you would be solely confined to the principles or the belief of a system. And, that's going to be a discussion in the near future. And I'm hoping to get individuals who can, in fact, who are qualified to place on record their position, as I mentioned earlier. Those who are in leadership should be speaking out on this matter. But I'm not hearing anything. And again, I'm going to say, is Biden a friend to the Virgin Islands? We would hope so. Now, this morning, I wanted to touch on a subject, and folks, and I say Virgin Islanders, all Virgin Islanders, if there's one thing you know when it comes to me, I don't have a problem with touching certain issues that nobody else wants to touch. And certainly, I like to provoke discussion. And when I say provoke thoughts, it's to provoke thoughts for folks to be able to participate and along the way have the opportunity to enlighten people. Because, you see, there are certain things that a lot of Virgin Islanders don't pay close attention to. And it's not because it's really not of interest to them, but it's because it's at times it's not something common for us. And what I'm talking about is the subject this morning that I wanted to touch on, that it's a foreign word, but I wanted to break down what that word actually means. And it's gentrification. What is gentrification? You know, what is gentrification? It's even hard for me to pronounce because it's not a word that we commonly use. And you know, we stumble with some of them words that we don't commonly use. But I wanted to discuss this particular issue this morning because the question is whether or not it's happening in the Virgin Islands. As many of you know, those of you who are familiar with the word, with the term gentrification, it's something that needs to be explained, and I believe it's worth us having a discussion about that particular issue this morning, because as I said, it's around us, it's here. I mean, that word in itself, that topic could be very controversial. And when I say very controversial, because no one really likes to speak about that particular issue. So what I'm going to do is try to play a little caption, because I put a little recording together to allow for folks to learn exactly what it is along the way, because I think it's so important so that you understand when someone uses that term, that you honestly understand what it means. So let me see if I can pull
the word gentrification mentioned in the news, in the industry you're working in, or maybe even in some political context. Well, gentrification is happening more and more in the world around us, so it's important to understand what people are talking about when they rattle off this word. Gentrification is the process of a low-income and sometimes crime-ridden urban area transforming into a more upscale and affluent area. Gentrification is usually initiated by affluent residents and businesses moving into an area that is accompanied by the renovation and reconstruction of buildings, parks, and other local amenities. It involves both economic and demographic change and a change in the overall makeup of the people who live in the area. As the area improves and becomes more desirable, property values, rents, and the cost of living will also become more expensive. Gentrification can result in displacing residents who may have lived in the area their entire life, but all of a sudden are unable to afford the higher cost of living, forcing them to move. Gentrification is somewhat of a controversial subject. In most cases, the areas that experience gentrification are initially low-income minority communities. And as the area improves and prices increase, it's the more educated and affluent residents that tend to benefit from the change, because these residents are the ones who can actually afford to stay. It's the less educated, lower income households that are negatively impacted by gentrification. And this isn't just with renters either. Homeowners may own their property outright, but see such a big increase in property taxes they can no longer afford to live in the area. Gentrification does not occur in every urban city, and it usually doesn't happen in the poorest, most dangerous neighborhoods either. Typically, there needs to be some kind of cultural opportunity in order for gentrification to occur.
So you see, folks, I just wanted. I just wanted the opportunity to share that with you, and just try to spark some discussion and provide a level of awareness, of course, for Virgin Islanders. And there's some questions that I wanted to pose this morning, and of course, we don't have anyone calling. So what I'll do is revert to Facebook for those who are on my official page. To allow them to chime in some way or the other, since we don't have telephone calls coming in this morning, attributed to a problem with the telephone system. But what is considered a poor urban area? Now, question. What are the characteristics of gentrification? I shared that with you. Does gentrification exist in the U.S. Virgin Islands? Should there be any concern? Does the high cost of living contribute? Are Virgin Islanders being displaced in any way? Is the government protecting the rights of Virgin Islanders? Are there different classes of citizens in the Virgin Islands? So those are the questions that I wanted to ask, and unfortunately, and I'm so sorry that, because I know there are certain people who would have wanted to call in and participate in this discussion, but unfortunately, we're not able to entertain those calls this morning. But we have this particular topic was broached on another radio program. But the reason I brought it up is last week I was approached by an individual from St. Croix. And I don't want to place his name on the record, but he actually mentioned to me that he called into a radio station and he wanted to discuss the term, but was immediately dismissed, sort of. And I don't think it was really dismissed. It was perhaps they were discussing another topic and was not prepared to indulge in a conversation about a term that they were not fully familiar with, or it would have been just another period of time, dedicated time, needed for this particular subject. And I bring it up because the Virgin Islands as a tourism destination, we are looking at enhancing our tourism product. We are also looking, and there's been a boom of vacation villas being erected left and right. And we talk about the affluent persons, or persons who are financially stable among us, that may be the few that can build their villas and do everything else, and be able to afford all the high costs. And I'll give you as an example, in terms of burdens being placed on Virgin Islanders. I saw in the newspaper a separate publication, a booklet, where a lot of Virgin Islanders owed property taxes, and they listed all their names in the paper. Now, they will tell you that they are only simply operating consistent with law. But the thing that I don't understand, it's one thing to operate consistent with law, but it's another thing to try to protect citizens from what is unnecessary. I'll give you an example. You print the name of an individual in the paper, and that individual owe $138 or $139. Is there a minimum amount? Obviously not. But you print in the name, and what makes it even worse is that person doesn't even owe, or didn't know that they had even owe, never received a notice. So now, if you're being consistent with the law, I must remind them that 3 notices were supposed to be sent to that individual. if I understand this thing correctly. But if I stand wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But again, going back to gentrification, when you look at the tax structure, when you look at the cost of living in the Virgin Islands, that food has elevated in the last 4 years. And I'm going back to the hurricane. It has elevated by leaps and bounds in a lot of different areas. And they will tell you that it's attributed to the cost of doing business. Now, going back to gentrification now. Gentrification and just the process, this is all inclusive, that you have the cost of living going up, our electrical bill going up, which plays, and I'm talking about our electricity, plays a major role in our successes, or let me flip it over, contributes to our failures. Because if you're going to have a business person, that electrical bill is far in excess of their rent and other expenses combined, that is serious. But now let me swing it over now to gentrification and talking about low-income people and persons with fixed incomes. Those persons with fixed incomes now are going to be struggling with the increase in property taxes, with the increases in the cost of living overall. Because collectively, when you combine it, they are placed in a predicament where they're finding themselves struggling. So now, let's switch it over to the enhancement of the Virgin Islands and all the enhancements that are taking place. Construction, building, and I'm talking about private dwellings and stuff like that. We start even with St. John. Person builds a big house next to a person that have lived there all their life with a small house. The value of that property is going to go up. That's how they're impacted. In one way, it's a good thing. In one way, it's a bad thing. The good side of it is that if the individual decides to sell their property, they could sell their property for a lot more. But on the flip side of it, the downside of it, the assessed value of the property determines the level of property taxes that you will be paying. So their property taxes go up. Are they in a position to afford it? That's when we start again. Is gentrification, does it exist in the Virgin Islands? Is Virgin Islanders feeling any characteristic or seeing any characteristic of gentrification in the Virgin Islands? And again, like I said, I don't have a problem with touching issues that are not often heard of. But I try to, kind of jostle thoughts and get people involved and want to know exactly what it is. As a senator, they call me an environmentalist, the environmental senator. I took on environmental issues when it was not fashionable. And I understood that it will take a process. And it was at the risk of Virgin Islanders feeling that it was an issue that was of relevance to the majority of Virgin Islanders. I wasn't pandering based on political or assuming political posturing. I was more trying to enlighten people and to put in place what I thought and I felt would be protecting their basic fundamental rights. The rights to clean air, clean water. Now coming back to gentrification again, I think it's a word that we should be discussing. It's a process that we should be discussing, because if we don't start to come up with some creative ways to start lessening the burden on Virgin Islanders, like for example, if we're able to create revenue producing measures that are significant, that are tangible, that portions could go to the GRS system, and certainly portions can go to even making adjustments in certain areas, whether we increase the assistance program for elderly people with paying WAPA bills, whether we try to adjust rates on property taxes, suspending a percentage for years because we have received a windfall from these tangible revenue producing programs. It's all about finding some level of relief for Virgin Islanders. And this issue, gentrification, it's going to be eventually come to the forefront. Folks are not grasping it right now. I don't think we are really paying attention. And I remember a few years ago, there were a couple of former senators that tried to secretly see how they could convert, maybe put Paul and Pacing Gardens out to allow for an investor to expand their property. And when they got the blowback, because I said something publicly, that you don't try to do things that would disenfranchise folks or displace them without giving them an opportunity to understand what you're doing and to learn what you're doing, to see if there's an objection or there's support. So my argument became, don't try to conceal anything. Tell the people what you guys are trying to do. So when that pushback came, they started to run helter-skelter. Now, with that, the property across the street, if they totally privatize the property, Paul and Pacing Gardens, would it increase or change the value of those properties and eventually start increasing the property taxes for those who would have owned the properties? We have to be able to coexist. Paul and Pacing Gardens been there for many, many years, and it will continue to be there for many, many years. But this is where the government comes in now, on the protection of all classes of people. Not just one class, all classes of people. This is where you come up with creative ways to provide relief for Virgin Islanders. So, gentrification, does it exist in the Virgin Islands? I wanted the public to be the one, based on what I shared with the public, to provoke thoughts, to solicit your input, to allow you the opportunity to chime in the discussion and share with me what you thought, what you felt. Or do you feel that gentrification exists in the U.S. Virgin Islands? But the bottom line here is, can there potentially be residents that are going to be displaced in the Virgin Islands? Because when you combine everything, the cost of living overall in the Virgin Islands, food, electricity, and it go on, will folks be able to sustain it? Those on fixed income and those on lower income. Because if that middle class now is pushed into a lower class because they do not qualify for different assistance from these assistance programs, then they will be in a predicament where they're struggling as well. And they're struggling because they don't have the assistance, they don't have the benefit of maybe receiving food stamp and receiving other program or benefits that will be available to persons that meet a certain or within a certain threshold. But does gentrification exist in the U.S. Virgin Islands? And I think government officials, I'm quite sure a few of them listening to me this morning. I'm hopeful that you're listening to me, and you really are paying close attention, and collectively, and I'm talking about when I say collectively, all the leaders them, that they start to put heads together to not only see how you're going to provide different assistance program or additional assistance for Virgin Islanders, but to see how collectively we could come up with some brilliant ideas for some revenue producing programs to be able to contribute to the system. And I'll give you one as an example, and I'm hoping that it can eventually move. Do you guys remember, I think it was in 2001, that they had passed or approved an agreement on legislation for internet gaming? Have any of you heard of DraftKings? DraftKings is probably making more money than the majority of corporations in the United States, and it is an internet gaming business which focuses on sports betting. Now, is there sports betting in the Virgin Islands? There's a lot of establishments have sports betting in the Virgin Islands. And if the government doesn't get the internet gaming in place, that's a loss of revenues. And it will continue to be a loss of revenues. So I've just brought one out that was not reinventing the wheel, but saying to the government, saying to the governor, saying to all involved, of all who it would be of interest to, that we have some revenue producing program. It's just to expand it. It's just to effectuate or implement it the way that it's supposed to be implemented. And folks, I want you to see that legislation have already been passed with great potential, but it stays to languish because when you have somebody saying his experience is worth less and doesn't really put people in certain places with experience because they're inexperienced themselves, what do you have? Lack of progress. So the lack of progress, you have medicinal marijuana legislation with an amendment in the nature of a substitute sent to the Senate for recreational marijuana. It's moving nowhere. But in the meantime, the recreational aspect of it, the amendment is not moving anywhere. But what are you doing to put in place the medicinal marijuana legislation, what it calls for? Because I believe there's timelines and there's things in there that could be of, that it could be put in place to generate revenues. And if I'm not mistaken, the medicinal marijuana part of this revenues was dedicated to the GRS system, and the GRS system was hopeful that this would be in place and it would start generating revenues to go into the GRS system for the purpose of making sure that that system remains solvent. So I'm coming back to the topic I was discussing, gentrification. How are you going to be able to afford or direct assistance or increase assistance to Virgin Islanders that need the assistance if you're not generating any new revenues? Because then all you're doing is providing pie in the sky. Because if you're going to put a program in place that requires funding, requires money, are you going to continue to take it from the general fund that is not receiving any new revenues into the coffers and just continue to over obligate the government? Because the pie in the sky is telling them that, oh, we're going to put money to your program. But then behind the curtain, they're saying we don't know when you're going to get it. So they appropriate the money, very well knowing that that dedicated money or that appropriation will never be realized to an allotment until they decide that they can distribute that money. So you see this, there's so many moving parts, so many variables that we need to connect. And so when you hear me say connect the dots, I'm speaking about gentrification this morning. I just want to connect the dots. In connecting the dots with revenue producing programs that still have not gotten off the ground. And you sometimes wonder, what are they looking at? And whether or not you practice what you preach. Practice what you preach. So if medicinal marijuana was put in place, it's supposed to generate revenues. Internet gaming was already passed years ago and it's supposed to be implemented and put in place. I've been singing this song for years. But our folks, the folks that need to listen, are they really listening? So folks, you know, Virgin Islanders, when we talk about this gentrification, it's really the government's responsibility to really ensure that residents are not displaced. So we talk about the burden on residents who may not be able to afford to live in the Virgin Islands in the future. And it could potentially be the near future. Because there's a lot of Virgin Islanders that, by comparison, when they leave and they go abroad, and they're able to live the experience in a respective state, whether they're going to shop at Walmart, what do you call the other places? Major grocery stores in the States, and they're able to compare those prices. I mean, there is conveniences and there's inconveniences when they look at all the essentials that they have to pay for, whether it's cable, and they start asking questions and they start making a comparison. A person on a pension may feel that they're better off living in the States where the cost of living is lower than the U.S. Virgin Islands. So then you have another Virgin Islander who's leaving the Virgin Islands because things doesn't seem to be getting better. And not to mention the young people. The young who are now becoming young, or the young adults that now are evolving and maturing to really stand on their own. But they're able to go abroad and they're sizing up opportunities and they're able to see the difference in the cost of living. Their ability to own a house, their ability to afford a house, their ability to pay or fulfill all the responsibilities that come with it. And I'm talking about financial. And the list goes on and on. The U.S. Virgin Islands, the dynamics is changing. The trajectory, I'm not sure where we're headed. But I can tell you in hindsight or from my observation, things are not moving. And that could come back to haunt us. And when we talk about this issue, gentrification and the displacement of folks, because the tremendous burden, the cost of living, not being able to even afford their property taxes, we better pay close attention and restructure our priority list, or they need to restructure the priority list as public officials. Because how does this contribute to other things? There's a possibility that you displacing families and they have kids, and their kids see that their parents are struggling. They are going to find different forms. For those who are responsible, are going to find different ways to sustain the family. So they go out and maybe it becomes survival for them. If it becomes survival, that's not a good sign. Because what do you think is going to happen? They go out and they take their chances because it's survival. And what does this do to our even law enforcement agency or department in the Virgin Islands? It places a burden on them as well. Because if you don't have these support programs and you're not able to really address the root causes of the problems, then it's like we're becoming the dog chasing its tail, round and round and round, and ultimately a territory where the residents being victimized by the own system that created it. So we need to pay close attention, and we might not want to discuss that issue because I'm quite sure that many of you Virgin Islanders have not heard anyone speaking, really, government officials that is, speaking about gentrification and what it consists of, because it's in itself a very controversial term. Yes, because people have different definitions. But the definition I shared with you was actually structured and was calculating to narrow it down to what it really means and what it should mean to Virgin Islanders. And should Virgin Islanders pay attention to this? term. So Virgin Islanders, we know that word is not a word that is commonly used. But you're hearing it, for those of you who are hearing it this morning. Read up on it. Pay attention. Study its characteristics and determine whether or not it exists around us. And what do we need to do? Because your collective ideas, and one of the things I always did as a senator is I would sit down and listen to people's ideas. You think going years back, the idea of a rate investigation of the telephone company at that time was born by me? No, it wasn't born by me. That idea was planted by folks in the public, folks in different respective professions, to include employees, a couple of employees from Vitelco at the time, to residents outside who did not like how things was evolving and how the company was functioning. So ideas were born. So in this instance here, as we elaborate on gentrification, I encourage many of you to just read up on it. And I'm talking about those of you that live in the Virgin Islands, and even Virgin Islands abroad, that have a vested interest in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Please pay close attention. And whatever you can do in your respective area, whether it's financially to aid a family member in the Virgin Islands, in providing some sense of direction as well, because there are folks that they're impacted and they don't really have personal solutions or a solution of their own. So they rely on other people to tell them exactly, what do you think I should do? But this issue, gentrification, is a greater issue. And I'm talking about, it's a broad issue. And considering the gamut of various different things that contribute to it, we have to start figuring out ways to offset it and to make sure that the territory is doing well from the government's perspective, and the government being able to provide essential services to Virgin Islanders. Some form of relief and solutions and assistance for them to ensure their ultimate survival. Because I'll tell you, I went to the store the other day, and a lot of you know what I'm talking about. I went to the store the other day and I looked at a bag of oxtail. I ain't gonna say which store it was in. And I saw this 5 pound, I think it was a 5 pound bag of oxtail, because I know my mother loves oxtail. And when I looked at $74 for this little bag that consists of a lot of bones, I'm not a lover of oxtail, but I would eat it once in a full moon. And I know many of you love it. So could you imagine what these businesses that have to shop and buy these, want to buy oxtail because this is what their patrons are demanding. They want oxtail on the menu. But just to look at the prices here, and when you travel, because I travel every once in a while, and I make comparisons, I go to stores, I do different things when I'm abroad, and I'm making the comparisons for myself. So when I get back to the Virgin Islands, sometimes I'm depressed. I hate to see the fact that we have a utility company that is pretty much kind of struggling. And then you have intervention, but intervention to me that don't, in some of them don't make sense. But they're going to tell you that above all, let's do something. Okay, fine. Above all, let's do something. But at the end of the day, what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is supposed to be to provide relief for Virgin Islanders, because they're not getting any kind of relief. And this thing goes on and on and on. And I'm telling you, I do shopping all the time to buy different little things here in the Virgin Islands. And I'm seeing Just the prices, they may have been stable for a while. Yes, they're stable for a while. They're also high for a while. And that's business. They'll tell you that if you can't afford it and you feel it's too expensive, then maybe you should try bite someplace else. That's their basic response. But does the government have any control over that? I'll tell you, when we talk about this gentrification, and you look at the little guy that tries to start a business, or he start this little proprietorship, and he exceeds the income of maybe like 120,000 in a year, and he thinks he's making a whole bunch of money. But then he's subject to gross receipt taxes. Gross receipt tax is the most regressive tax on the planet. How do you adjust that? How do you change that? The only way that you could change it is to substitute it. So by now, our public officials should be weighing in on what could be some options in terms of revenues and how perhaps you could put the gross receipt taxes on a declining basis and phase it out when you put a tangible or some tangible revenue producing programs in place. That's what it's all about. Offering relief all around. Because you see, I believe that gross receipt tax have contributed to a lot of the increase in costs. Because businesses, if they're paying, they have to be able to offset the gross receipt taxes that is being applied. And if I may just mention to you what it is. It's a 5% gross receipt tax that is on your income, and regardless, well, your gross earnings, and regardless of what expenses you have, once you have exceeded that threshold for the amount you made, if you don't have great, not good, great accounting practices in place, your business will not last, because you're going to end up owing gross receipt taxes, and there is a penalty and interest applied to it if you're not paying it. So I know that there's a lot of things that we could be doing, and you know, Melvin Leonard, I know you posted, and I'm looking at what you posted here, and I just wanted to read out, and this is on Facebook because I try my best to stroll over and look at all the communication that is coming in. And he said, we had cows on St. Thomas grazing. The powers that be stopped the raising of other domestic livestock. Tortola put its local poultry, fish, and meats packaged by the Agriculture Department, which keeps food costs down. That's a good point. Very, very good point. Because are we really placing enough emphasis on agriculture in the U.S. Virgin Islands? We have a lot of open space, and if I may add, I've been closely connected to a lot of the farmers here in St. Thomas. A lot of people don't know, but when I served in the Senate, I made sure that I was able to maverick a record number of leases for those farmers in Bordeaux. Why? Because once they had a lease in place, then they were able to get loans, they were able to apply for federal aid, they were able to participate in a lot of programs that would help to enhance agriculture in the Virgin Islands. So it was up to them and what they choose to do with it. But I thought that it was unconscionable to have farmers farming and don't have a lease on the property that they're developing or they're farming on. So all their livestock and everything that they had there, for them to continue operating without a lease in place, what are they going to be able to apply for? How are they going to be able to really, really grow? So now we move to St. Croix. Look at how much agricultural land St. Croix have. But are they provided with the resources and the different programs to really build agriculture to that next level? And I will say they're not receiving the resources. And maybe we need to place some strong emphasis on that. So as we grow the community, as we support these different programs, and they prosper, then we prosper. So when we talk about gentrification, again, you're empowering more people to be able to circulate more money and to be able to own a piece of the rock based on the reasonable incomes that they realize. So, folks, I know that a number of you may have wanted to call on the telephone lines and witnessed that the telephone lines are not working. And this comes with, again, power outages, as they say, that actually disrupts any system, any electrical device. I know many Virgin Islanders are there, an additional burden placed on them where one of your appliances get knocked out. I had a TV that was just affected, a new TV. That's a burden on me because now I'm forced to go and buy a new television, which is a cost or monies that could have been placed somewhere else. But this gentrification, this term, I know many of us, because you see, some people try to spur it and spin it in a way that it talks about races. No, you got poor in every race. If you're poor, you're poor. If you're rich, you're rich. In most cases. And certainly this gentrification, a person who's earning low income, could easily be displaced if the high cost of living or the cost of living continues to elevate and go up, because they're not in an advantageous position. So let's hope that we can place emphasis in the right places and that we're able to truly offer some meaningful legislation, even coming from the Senate, even coming from the governor, that you could put meaningful legislation in place, but also to champion what have been put in the past by former colleagues, former senators, and I mean going way back, because even with the income tax set aside that I went to court and took to court, I actually amended the law and changed the law from it was 4.5%. That wasn't my idea about the 4.5% set aside. That was a former senator idea. I believe it went back to the council. That was one of their ideas. When I read it, I saw that there were deficiencies in the accompanying language. So what I did, I drafted additional language, added it to the bill to ultimately do what? To ultimately see if we could fix a system to make sure that it works for the people of the Virgin Islands. Took the matter to court. That was my prerogative as a taxpayer with standings. A taxpayer with standings, a taxpayer that was owed income tax refunds. And all I sought to do was to try to enhance the system and help to correct the system to empower the employees of IRB so that they don't get frustrated because people calling in and want to know where is their refund. This was intended to put them in a position where they're happy to say, oh, your refund went down in a bash down to finance and you're going to be paid in 2 weeks from your filing date. Yes, that's what it was intended to do. But somehow the system and all the connections between different agencies that were charged with responsibility continue to operate as they feel or they deem fit, and it creates hardship for others. And people have gotten to the point, even with income tax refunds, that when it come. This is not a favor. This is an entitlement. If a person overpaid, pay them on time. If they file on time, pay them on time. This should only be a 2-week turnaround. And I'm quite sure that the IRB is realizing by now that the number of people going and filing their returns in the States is increasing year after year, the longer you take to pay people, especially those single parent that have kids and use the refunds as a windfall to be able to afford the basic accessories for either their children to go to school or other basic accessories, essential things. But let's hope that we can get our act together, because if we don't get our act together, then we're headed down the wrong road. So this is Adler Fonsi Donnerstock here on Connect the Dots. We have approximately 5 more minutes, and I wanted to just try to slip in a couple of my sponsors, them who have been so gracious enough to supportive in providing me with sponsorship.
Today, from the water to the pot to your mouth, everything is fresh at Catch of the Day, located on Cookie Point Beach. Enjoy some of your favorite seafood dishes: fresh catch, lobster, tank, and whelks when in season, as well as surf and turf. They cater to your wishes. While you sit and wait for your food, enjoy the friendly bar and bask in an ambience that is second to none. Enjoy the white sand, sun, and crystal blue water. We are sure the experience will be unique. Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Come and enjoy Catch of the Day on Cookie Point Beach. And grocery store. Your number one convenience store, located across from Vitraco Park. You name it, and they have it. From electronic accessories to your favorite drinks. And from gas to groceries. You name it, and they have it. First stop 24-hour gas and grocery, located across from Vitraco Park. Check it out, your favorite store for gas and grocery.
Well, folks, we're almost at the end of the hour. We've got approximately 3 more minutes. And I'm sorry that I was not able to entertain calls online, but maybe next week. And I'm not sure I'm going to be on next week. I might take that Monday off for the purpose of attending a couple of funerals. But I just wanted to say to you guys to stand firm. I know that it's been a difficult time here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And, when you look at the progress from the last hurricane until now, and I'm really not seeing the progress in a significant way. And I wanted to backtrack or follow up on some of the discussions that we have had here on the radio with Mr. Griffith from the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority in particular. I'm looking forward to having a follow-up discussion with Mr. Nibbs, because Austin Nibbs from the GRS system, who wanted to clear up some stuff from a previous broadcast, and I welcome that because I think Mr. Nibbs is that one person that have been echoing the concerns of the GRS system and trying to build the GRS system to the point where he can extend, or they can extend their life of the GRS system. Because you keep hearing these dates or these years that the system could potentially go insolvent. When you're talking insolvency, that's not good news, especially for the retirees. Retirees that depend on that pension coming in. That I just don't see how those persons with a fixed income, because that's a fixed income, unless they choose to go subsidize their income by working. And you have a lot of retirees who are still working. I know a number of them, because they subsidize their income from being able to afford the things that they want in their life, to be able to afford conveniences to even the tangibles. And you can't blame them, but I'm sure that they too are still concerned about the system being impacted or becoming insolvent. So we need to get on the ball. I know we saw some ships coming in, and I believe the WICODAC, the GRS system, realizes from the rental of properties over there, which they're partial owners. But I think Mr. Nibbs wanted to come in, and I we'll have that discussion where he's able to elaborate on a lot of things and perhaps share with the public what the GRS system is doing at this time. And I'm going to ask him questions even about the GRS system and, these programs that were supposed to generate revenues, where a portion of the revenues was going to be earmarked to the GRS system. So those are discussions we will have to have, because I think it's extremely, extremely important that we have these discussions to know what's on the drawing board, what's on the rising, and how the Virgin Islands will benefit from these programs. So folks, I'm at the bottom or the end of the hour. I can't say the bottom. Are you going to tell me is the bottom is 10:30, but at the end of my hour is 11 o'clock. So I'm here every Monday morning from 10 to 11 a.m., not just to share my perspective with you, but also to entertain your ideas, your suggestions, and your concerns here at Connect the Dots, live at WSTA, Lucky 13, every Monday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. And I'll be here for as long as I could possibly be here on air, being that one voice to even address issues that no one else dares to touch. And yes, I chuckle about it all the time. What dots you connecting this morning? But you know what? If he pays close attention and follow the entire program, because I know Ari knows following the entire program, you're going to hear how I'll connect the dots. But I'm happy to hear, Ari, this is a special message to you. I'm so happy to hear your voice sounding so strong. And we're looking back to seeing you back here in the Virgin Islands, of course, and continue to do whatever you're doing. I think your daughter is doing an excellent job, whatever she's doing, because your voice getting stronger and stronger, and you still your usual self. And there's a lot of people in the Virgin Islands that actually appreciate what you do. So speedy recovery to you, and may you God grace you with good health. So on that note, folks, I just wanted to wish everyone that's listening to have a productive week and a blessed week. So until next Monday, see you then.
Tuning in to Connecting the Dots as we look forward to hearing from you next Monday. Connecting people.
And St. Dry. Nothing can come between us but the waters that divide, yeah. Even though we're just a few square miles, I travel around the world with Virgin Island pride, yeah. A lot of people still going through strife, and still we live a joyful life. That's why the place nice, so nice, so nice. Sweet, sweet St. Thomas nice, so nice, so nice. St. Cry full of pure